For my first Dunvilles Irish whiskey, we're going to start off with a bang. This right here is the 13-year-old, very rare single malt Irish whiskey from Dunvilles that comes in a cask strength and was finished in PX or Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. And we get it into the glass, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, they actually call this the Dark Series, and you can see the bottle is kind of dark on it, and looking at that whiskey at natural colour, that is also very dark, because this here is a cask strength whiskey, like I said, from Dunvilles that spent a long time in PX sherry casks. Now, this here was actually specially released just in time to coincide with Whisky Live Dublin earlier on this month, but this here is the Dunvilles single malt whiskey that they source. Now, I'll get to that in a second. They have released a few whiskies in this kind of very rare line. Up to now, they've got like a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, this year 13-year-old, I think there's a 23-year-old as well, but this here is the cask strength edition that they released there for Whisky Live Dublin not too long ago. Now, this is sourced. This is actually, so Dunvilles as a brand existed a long time ago. Unfortunately, the brand closed down. There weren't any people left to work on the brand, no family members, so they just closed down the distillery essentially. And the Echlinville Distillery up in Belfast has opened, and they've got kind of taken over the brand, and they're releasing whiskies under the Dunvilles brand that they're sourcing from other places. Now, they don't actually tell you where they're sourcing it from. Now, with a bit of like, you know, thinking about it, you can see, oh, it's a double distilled single malt, so that's most likely going to have come from the Cooley Distillery. Now, the Great Northern Distillery do sometimes run double distillations. They normally do triple distilled, but if it's double distilled, it's most likely coming from the Cooley Distillery up in Northern Ireland. The Great Northern Distillery does occasionally do like double distilled runs, but for the most part, if it's double distilled Irish whiskey that has a bit of an age on it, most likely that's going to be coming from the Cooley Distillery up in the north of the Republic of Ireland. So I think that's where it's coming from, and most people online, the smart money says it's from the Cooley Distillery, but they don't actually say where exactly it came from. When I was at Whisky Live, I went to the Dunville stand and I asked them how many years was it in bourbon and how many years was it in PX casks, and they said, oh, it was 7 years in bourbon and then 6 years in PX. Oh, wait, no, it was 6 years bourbon and 7 years in PX. I don't know, come back to me. So they didn't even know on the stand exactly how long it was. It might have been 6.5, or something like that. But either way, it's a 13-year-old that spent, let's say, about half of its life in PX sherry casks. And I think we can get that vibe just based on how dark the whiskey is when you look at it in the glass. And what's kind of interesting about it, if you look at the back of the bottle, here on the printed label, it says that it's 46% alcohol by volume, but on the front of it, they've gone over that in black, and then they've written in by hand in a little gold pen that it's 56.1% alcohol by volume, because this was bottled on the 6th of May, on the 6th of the 5th, 2025. So it wasn't actually bottled that long ago, so they probably didn't have time to do up a whole new bottling line. So that's why it has it written up front, 56.1%, but on the back it's 46% alcohol by volume. So there's a little bit of a kind of, I suppose, a misprint there if you're into that sort of thing, if you're into collecting kind of weird looking whiskies. But that's all there is roughly to say about it. It's natural colour, non-chill filtered, cask strength. So let's go in for the nose on the Dunville's very rare 13-year-old PX finished single malt at cask strength. Cheers. Like, it's got this big hit of sherried malt front, and like sherried malt has this very interesting, like, it's fruity, it's sweet, it's a little bit like not savory, but it's a little bit like dark and quite fruity. So I've tried a lot of sherried malts in my time, and this here is, I'd say, a little bit fruitier on the nose than others. Like, there's a bit of apple, orchard fruits, there's a bit of strawberry, actually, yeah, a little bit of a bit of strawberry. I wouldn't say raspberry, but I'd say a bit of strawberry, that kind of note coming through. And yeah, like, it's quite sweet up front with a bit of fruitiness, and then you get this wrapper of PX sherry where you get this dark, like, figs, plums, black cherries, those kind of notes with a little undercurrent of like earthy notes. Maybe not fully like cigar, but like a bit of almost leathery, dark, almost spicy, earthy notes behind it. Yeah, I mean, it's It's a nice PX malt. A nice bit of, like I said, a nice bit of fruitiness, a bit of wrapper there. It doesn't really feel super hot. Like there's no big hit of alcohol in my nose. I can feel that it's higher than like 40%, it's higher than like 46%, but it doesn't feel hot coming out of the glass. So let's go in for the palate and see if that changes. Cheers. It's rich on the palate and actually a little hot. Like there's a little hit of that alcohol coming through there, but it's mostly in with that, like the sweetness, the sherry notes. It's got that, like I said, slightly fruity orchard fruit notes, but it's a little bit earthier on the palate than it is on the nose. Like the nose, I was getting strawberries. Here, not really getting strawberries, and getting more of those like dark cocoa, oak spice, leathery, darker notes coming through. Like it is still sweet, but it was just as it was sitting in my palate, those earthier notes were coming up, those darker notes were coming up, but it still has this wrapper of like Pedro Jimenez sherry syrupy sweetness going on. So I'm gonna go in again for a second sip, see what else I can find. Cheers. I can feel it in my cheeks, like with the alcohol. I can feel that in my cheeks there a little bit, but on the palate there, second sip around, I got a bit more of that like biscuity malt, like toasted walnuts, kind of cooked grains note a little bit. There was still those dark earthy notes, like it's a little bit less fruity than the nose, it's a little bit less sweet than the nose, but those notes are in the background. It's just up front you get those big hits of like darker notes, then you get like the biscuity malty notes, and then the fruity sweet notes are kind of underneath it there. As you let it sit in your palate, you get them coming through. So it's just a nice big hit of sherried malt. So I'm gonna go in again for the finish, see what lasts the longest. Cheers. Okay, so on the finish, after a breath, like those dark notes are there, but like they soften a little bit. So like that tobacco leather is there after a breath, but it's much softer. Like those figs, dark fruits, plums, cherries, those things actually, yeah, the black cherry, now that I'm talking, now that I'm breathing, that black cherry is coming through here a little bit more. Like it's, I wouldn't say it's the sweetness, I wouldn't say the strawberries, the syrupy sweetness, I'd say that has gone pretty quickly. The earthy notes are subdued, but that dark fruity note is there. So it's that's kind of lingering on nicely. It's, I'd say, medium to long in the finish. Like as I'm talking now, I'm still tasting it, but it's not like super strong. I'm not getting like a super big different direction, because again, it's just malt, bourbon and PX. It's a great combination, but it's not going to give you something a bit weird or a bit out of left field. Like if you had a good PX malt, you kind of know what to expect, and this here is a good PX malt. Now, before I give my final thoughts, even though I may have just given it away right there, like I said, I put out whiskey reviews every Wednesday. I put out cocktail recipes every Friday. I won't have a cocktail recipe featuring this whiskey this Friday, because that's a little bit hard to find, a little bit rare, a little bit expensive, but I will have a cocktail recipe this weekend. So if you want to check that out, make sure you hit subscribe, and while you're down there, leave me a note in the comments. Let me know if there's a whiskey you think I should review in future. But for now, my final thoughts on this whiskey. I like it. So I went to Whiskey Live Dublin twice this year. I went on the first day and then on the second day, and I tried this both days before I bought it, and both days I liked it. So I said, yeah, I'm going to buy it. So I knew going into it that I liked this whiskey because it's a solid, well-made PX sherry finished malt. So Dunvilles, they have released, the Echlinville Distillery has released their own whiskey now, and they're planning on releasing more and more of their own whiskey, blending it into different blends and kind of making use of the stuff they've been making. But this here shows that they've got good casks, that PX sherry, let's say they bought it from Cooley when it was either 6 or 7 years old, and they took it out of the bourbon and put it into a PX sherry cask. That PX sherry cask is good because it gave it, as you can see, look at all that colour, look at all that flavour you got in the whiskey. And I think that shows that what they're doing is gonna be good. Like it's gonna be good whiskey because they've got good casks. I wouldn't have imagined that they've used all their good casks on the Dunvilles brand, and then the Echlinville brand won't have anything good. So I'd say it's just kind of a good proof of concept that what's going to come out of the Echlinville Distillery will be hopefully better than this, but at least as good. So I'm going to keep on enjoying it, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.